All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us here on the Real World Podcast. Today we are talking all about Deadpool and Wolverine and every X-Men movie. We're going to review and rank each one. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's get started. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Real World Podcast. Make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos. Today we're talking about the X-Men movies. This is a long time coming. I'm a huge X-Men fan. Grew up watching these movies. They really mean a lot to me. So really excited to talk about all of these different films. We got a lot to cover. But joining me on this endeavor, I got to introduce Anthony. He's here.
Yes,
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, he's ready for the
I am
X-Men
ready.
extravaganza. And also, we've
Yes.
got Bert on this one. How you doing, man?
Cam, I'm doing good. How about you?
Oh, you got the Cyclops style going on.
Okay, you caught on to it. All right,
I
good.
love it. I love it. It's
I
great.
thought it was Professor X.
Either, I guess.
He should
Yeah.
have shaved his head for Professor X. That
Yeah.
would have been cool.
If I was all in, that would, yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Like I said, we got a lot of movies to cover, so let's jump right in. Okay, folks. Well, we're kicking things off where it all started. Back in the year 2000, July 14th, 2000, X-Men was released into theaters. This is really the first of the modern era of comic book movies. Of course, we had the Superman movies back in the 70s and 80s, Tim Burton's Batman, and that kind of, fizzled out with, Batman and Robin. And the comic book movie genre was kind of a joke. I mean, it was kind of like
Yeah.
people were just over it. They didn't really get it. But the team behind the scenes really went darker, grittier, more grounded. I mean, the opening shot here is in 1944 Poland, Nazi-occupied Poland. I mean, it really just sets the tone, right, for this. And this is
Yeah.
this is not, we're not playing around here. I mean, this is serious business. And it just really does a great job of drawing you in. That opening scene with the young Magneto is just, heart-wrenching,
Yeah.
And so they do a great job of grounding the film. This was really the first one I really remember watching a lot when I was younger. This came out when I was like, 9 or 10, watching it on VHS. It was probably like the first, one of the first PG-13, kind of comic book movies I'd ever seen. And I just really always liked it. I mean, it just, again, the way it kind of grounds itself and brings you into the story. It takes itself seriously. This is what Nolan was very much inspired by to make Batman Begins, just 5 years later. So
Yeah.
it's had a big impact on cinema as a whole, but specifically the comic book genre. We hadn't really seen anything, taken quite this seriously before. It's focused in on Rogue and Wolverine. Those are kind of the main characters here, the audience surrogates, who are kind of outside the world of the X-Men that are kind of brought in, and they kind of have to learn about what this is all about, what's a Magneto, and all these great, kind of things that they're learning throughout it with the audience. So I really like that idea. I think it's a really well-written screenplay. Great action here. I think the effects hold up pretty well. I mean, for being a movie that's 24 years old, they're not doing too much CGI. A lot of it is practical, but even the CG effects, I think, hold up fairly well. Really great score. Really like the music here. The theme is excellent. The camera work, again, the lighting, it's a lot darker. It's kind of grounded, more gritty kind of style. It's not kind of one of these bright and colorful, superhero movies, just because that
Right.
wouldn't fit the tone. So I like it a lot. It's under 2 hours, well edited. It kind of gets the job done. Has a solid plot. Great performances. The cast here, of course, we'll talk about the cast in all these movies, but Hugh Jackman, Wolverine. I mean, that's just such an iconic casting now. And looking back, I mean, I see now kind of people that were around back then talking about it and how he was too tall and he was Australian and how he was he was in a lot of musicals back early in his career. So it was just kind of an outside the box choice, but obviously it worked out extremely well. Such a perfect pairing of actor and character. So revolutionary film, it kind of changed the game in many ways, and the genre owes a lot to this film. So I look back on it fondly, and it's one that I greatly enjoy. So, Bert, why don't you tell us a little about what you think about the first X-Men movie?
Yeah, and you start talking about what people think about, the characters too tall, this and that. So I don't really read comic books, graphic
Right.
novels, or whatever they're called. But you have, right? Have you both
Oh yeah,
read them?
sure.
Okay. And so the fun perspective is that we both really enjoy these films, but I have zero of the knowledge, other than there's a line in the first X-Men where I think they say, "What would you prefer, yellow spandex?" And I think even I knew that was like I'd seen maybe a picture of them. I assume it's from the comics, right?
Right, right,
And
sure.
and so and
Hey,
yeah,
just real quick, before
yeah,
you move on, you know why they didn't go with the yellow and blue? It wasn't obviously the tone, it wouldn't really fit, but also the producers looked at The Matrix, which came out the year before this, and they said, those guys were all in black leather. Put them all in black leather. That'll work.
yeah, and it
That's how
does.
producers' minds work, I guess, but kind of funny.
Yeah, there were some good choices made, some critical ones too, such
Mm,
as the movie could have just thrown out the names Magneto and Wolverine and just acted like that's just a normal thing, but
right.
instead they decided to call it out and make fun of it, and
Yeah.
that totally just makes it acceptable and work for the movie.
Yep.
Because I didn't know what Magneto was, so without that I feel like it would have been Magneto, huh? Like,
Right, right.
but even they think it's kind of silly.
Yes.
But yes, this is so good for its budget.
Yeah.
It's almost like an independent film,
Right.
superhero
Right. Yeah.
film, and then to get the star power that they did.
Mm,
I don't know, maybe they had to spend all their budget on the stars, but to get Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen,
right.
I mean, Patrick Stewart was kind of at a career high, after Star Trek Next Generation.
Right.
And I think hadn't Ian McKellen already done the first Lord of the Rings? That was
He had
already
shot
out,
it, but it hadn't come out yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so he took two big chances maybe with those
Right. He did.
in
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings and this. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's just a really great jump start to this era, like
Mm.
you're talking about. So it's one I definitely like and have watched many times.
Excellent. Great. Anthony, give us your thoughts on that first X-Men movie.
It is a little dated,
I think it is.
honestly. I think
Okay.
it's a little
Okay.
dated, but it's still good.
Yeah.
Especially it still holds up to
Yeah.
this day, honestly.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it does get a little emotional, especially towards the end
Sure.
when, Logan thinks Rogue
Mm,
is dead.
right. Right.
So yeah, it's good.
Good. You
Yeah.
like it?
Yeah, I like
Cool.
it.
Cool. Great. All right, guys, let's jump right into the sequel, X2. Sometimes subtitled or sometimes not, X-Men United. Released May 2nd, 2003. Um, I'll just come right out and say it. I think it was one of the best sequels ever made. It's one of
I
my
agree.
favorite sequel.
I agree.
It to me, it takes everything great about that first movie and just elevates it, right? So you get a bigger budget, so obviously the action effects are bigger and better. Um, the sets are bigger and just more, intricate and well designed. Um, there's just some really good storytelling going on here too. The themes obviously that run through the X-Men films. These characters were created back in the 60s during the civil rights movement. And so that's kind of at the heart of this whole thing, the whole idea of bigotry and prejudice. And so that is played up here even more. And it's done really well. It's not too heavy-handed, I don't think. Whereas, some movies would maybe, take it too far, but I think it balances itself out pretty well with being a big fun summer blockbuster action film and a story that's about characters and growth. And there's a lot of character development here, especially with Wolverine and him learning his backstory. The great Brian Cox is excellent as Stryker. I mean, he's just fantastic in every scene. He's very menacing, very intelligent. He feels dangerous, even though he's just a human. He doesn't have any mutant powers, but the whole time you're just kind of on the other seat going, this guy's gonna get them. Oh no. And
Yeah.
the whole attack on the X Mansion is an all-time great sequence. Of course, the opening White House scene is wonderful. I mean, just really kind of mind-blowing. And all the new characters are great too. Nightcrawler, of course, Alan Cumming does a great job in that role. Of course, as I already mentioned, Brian Cox, Kelly Hu, I think is kind of underrated. She plays Deathstrike, who's kind of his henchwoman. Um, and she, I don't think has a single line of dialogue the whole movie, but she is another one that's kind of just
Oh, yeah.
very in the background, menacing, kind of like you're very mysterious type of a character. It's very dangerous. So I like what they do with all that. I like what they do with Jean and Scott, Cyclops, in this. I think I would have maybe liked a little more focus on Cyclops is my favorite X-Man, and I feel like he really gets
Oh,
shortchanged in a lot of these movies because James Marsden is James Marsden. Did you?
Yeah.
James Marsden is great in the role. I just feel like he's underwritten a lot.
yes,
You know,
yes.
they definitely decided to focus on Wolverine, which is a choice, and that's fine. Hugh Jackman, again, he's great. So I get that you can't have every character be a main character, but I would have liked maybe a little bit more focus. I feel like the ending is still it hits hard though, you know, and that's the testament to the actors. Um, so yeah, huge fan of this. I mean, this is up there with some of my favorite again sequels just in general. But
Yeah.
Anthony, why don't you go first? Tell us what you think about
Okay.
X2.
The only thing I didn't like about this movie, because I like it, it is better than the first,
Mhm.
but the only thing I didn't like about this movie is the love triangle with Logan, Scott, and Jean. I
Yeah.
didn't really like that.
Okay.
Like, why
Really?
is
Okay.
Logan so like, why does he want her? I don't know.
Right.
I didn't really get that.
Sure.
But I did like the how mutants are rejected, you know, sort of in like a racial
Oh,
way, I
sure.
guess.
Yeah.
That was pretty good, I thought.
Mhm. Any other
Yeah.
scenes that stand out specifically or
Um,
action wise or
the
anything?
X Mansion raid,
Yeah.
I did
Is
like
that your
that a
favorite
lot.
scene?
Maybe,
Maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
It's
Yeah.
a good one. It's a good one. All right, Bert, go ahead and give us your thoughts on X2.
Yeah, Brian Cox just really grounds this film. I mean, he's so good in every film.
Yeah.
But just to get someone like that, just it just helps the film keep its feet on the ground than it otherwise would maybe. You know, so that's a crucial role there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the opening scene. I mean, I don't know of an action movie that has a more exciting opening scene, you know.
Yeah.
And maybe it was one of the best in the entire series, frankly.
Mhm.
And
Agreed.
then Mystique, I got to point out just her acrobatics with her
Oh, yeah.
fighting style.
Yeah.
That Rebecca Romaine,
Hmm.
Roman, I don't know how you say her
Hmm.
name.
Yeah.
She must have taken gymnastics or something, you know. But I love the way that they use that fighting style
Right.
with her.
Right.
It's really great. Yeah, the attack on the school is really epic, and yeah, we get some great stuff from Magneto in this film. You know, he makes fun of Rogue's hair. Uh, he sort of teams up with the X-Men at one point.
Yeah.
I
So
like that part about it actually.
Yeah.
I like when heroes team up with villains. It's a cool idea.
Yeah.
right, it's a theme throughout this entire series. It's like, okay, is Magneto
Yeah.
with us now? Okay, no, now we're trying to kill him, and now he's with us. You know, and I like that because
Yeah.
the fact that the lines have blurred a little bit makes it
Yeah.
more complex and more interesting.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I'll say is that yeah, that ending just really gets me.
Mm.
You know, Jean's sacrifice there, and you know, when it brings me in emotionally, then it's points are, you know, going up.
Exactly. I totally agree.
You know,
Another thing I wanted to mention was Pyro. I think Pyro has a great arc in this film too, because
yeah,
you really see how conflicted he is.
yeah,
You know,
that's
just
right.
even that opening scene in the museum with him, Iceman, and Rogue, and that whole trio, their little dynamic is really good.
Yeah,
And so yeah, it's great stuff. Rebecca Romaine, she's great in these. I agree. She's really underrated, I think, because she is another one that's doing a lot with a little, not a lot of dialogue, but all in kind of, you
right.
know, her body language and things. What's great about, I don't know, I don't want to, you know, shortchange her if she did all of her own stunts, but it would be easy to have a stunt woman just, you know, painted
Yeah,
blue like her because you couldn't
that's
really
true.
tell. So it may be a stunt lady.
That's a
I don't
good
know. I
point.
didn't look into that, but yeah, it is pretty
Yeah,
impressive what they're able to accomplish with her.
her voice, I don't love that. I don't know why they digitize it like that.
Yeah,
It's a little distracting, but you know, it's a small criticism.
sure. Gotcha. All right, let's jump into the third film in the trilogy, the first trilogy. It's called X-Men: The Last Stand. This was released May 26, 2006. So, just a little background. The behind the scenes team was completely changed for this film. So they had the same team in place, same writers and director for the first two movies. Uh, that team went over to make Superman Returns. And so they had to bring in a whole new team of writers and a new director
Mm.
for X-Men 3. And so to me, that's what hurts the movie the most. I really can tell that the same team's not involved because while you have the same cast, or at least most of the same cast, the tone is to me off here. I don't get the same impactful, hard-hitting, emotional elements that I have from those first two. Even the cinematography is a lot brighter. It's not nearly as darkly lit as the first two films are. And so just I'm kind of taken out of the movie a little bit, just especially when I watched them all like back to back this week. And it just kind of is a little jarring when I watch this third movie because not only is the visual style different, but the tone, again, they kind of try to have the same dramatic elements and themes throughout it, but for whatever reason, it doesn't quite mesh for me. This movie just feels a little disjointed. I feel like it goes for humor way too often as well. And the jokes, a lot of them just don't work for me at all. So I'm not as big a fan of X3, unfortunately. I think this one kind of dropped the ball a little bit as far as giving us a satisfying conclusion to these characters, which it tries to do. I mean, there's a lot of storylines here, right? You have like that whole storyline with the cure for mutation. You have,
Yeah.
Magneto kind of building his whole kind of brotherhood of mutants. Then you have the Phoenix, which is what X2 set up with Jean becoming this all-powerful being. And the three storylines just don't really ever, again, cross over very well or connect. They feel, again, kind of disjointed, like they're three separate movies almost. They're trying to work into one. Um, I love that they introduced Angel in this. He's one of the original X-Men. I like Ben Foster as an actor. Again, I feel like he's very underwritten. He's got like really three scenes in the whole movie.
Yeah,
I really feel
yeah.
like he doesn't really have any impact on the story at all. One character I liked what they did with was Beast. I think introducing Beast here was great. Another one of the original X-Men from the comics, Kelsey Grammer. The casting just doesn't get better than that. I mean, again, on level really for me with Hugh Jackman as far as just an actor that fits the character so well. Because Beast in the comics, he's super intelligent, but he's also this creature, he's this weird, monster kind of. So it's that whole kind of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type of a dynamic. And yeah, Kelsey Grammer just has this air about him that's very kind of intelligent and kind of sophisticated. So fits perfectly. A lot of deaths, I mean, it opens with the death of Cyclops, then we get the death of Professor X, we get the death of Jean, and they just kind of feel a little weightless to me. Unfortunately, I don't really feel it when they end up passing away. I don't know if it's just the way it's shot or the way they kind of, again, because the story is moving, you have to kind of move on with the story, and you don't really have enough time to really mourn for these characters. You don't really even see Cyclops die. It's just kind of handled poorly, in my opinion, the deaths of those characters. So I applaud them for taking the boldness to kill off characters. That's kind of a bold thing to do, but to me it just doesn't fully connect. I even feel like some of the action and CGI is not great in places. Some of it's good, some of it's not. I don't know. This one's just a mixed bag for me. I really don't I don't enjoy it nearly as much as the first two. So I just, for whatever reason, it doesn't quite work. So Bert, give us your thoughts on X-Men: The Last Stand.
I'm a big fan of this one.
Okay.
I think this one really does get me emotionally. It worked better for me. So I wanted to point out a few things. We have some de-aging here, like some early de-aging, right?
Yeah.
It mostly works. Sure. It was certainly interesting, especially when it first came out, because to see these actors, young again, sort of. Yeah. We get a Stan Lee cameo. Is this the first Stan Lee cameo in all the Marvel movies?
I don't think so. He was in the first X-Men.
He's in the background. It's a very blink and you'll miss it cameo in X1. And then he does show up in X2. I can't remember where, but yeah, this one is his most obvious cameo.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. So, and then something interesting too is we get this sequence where the X-Men are training, and there's sort of this warlike sequence, and then we found out it's just a simulation, right? But did you ever see Star Trek: The Next Generation? The holodeck?
Yeah. Right.
So I'm like, well, they borrowed that, like Patrick Stewart said, or something, right? I always think about that when I watch this movie.
Holodeck Origins.
Yeah. The mutant cure is an interesting thing because we get that also throughout the series. There'll be times where a character has that taken away permanently, or maybe for part of the movie, and then gets it back. And I guess it's a easy way to put the character at odds. Whereas they would otherwise be too powerful maybe for the person trying to fight or whatever. So that's interesting. There's some really sort of poetic lines in this film. Like Storm at one point says, I forget who she says to, but she says they can't cure us because there's nothing wrong with us. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
some kind of
sure.
obvious stuff.
Right, right.
And then Magneto, I thought it was really poignant when Mystique loses her power. He says, "Such a shame she was so beautiful," and
Right.
that just really gets me. And
Yeah.
it's another theme that we will see a lot throughout the series, which is that um, you know, be proud of who you are. You know, be
Yeah.
yourself
Right.
because that's what's truly beautiful. You don't need to overcome something to get
Yeah.
to be a beautiful person. So I really
Right,
like that.
right. Mm-hmm.
There's some really good music in this movie. I like when the X-Men are fighting alongside humans at one point. So the ending, uh, I really feel emotionally it's really good when
Mm.
Wolverine almost sacrifices himself to
Right.
to get to what needs to be done. The
Sure.
CGI does suffer a little bit. I'm not sure it was smart to try to move the entire Golden Gate Bridge and that kind of thing.
Right.
It's so big that I think
Yeah.
2006 can't quite work
Yeah.
that through. That's more like 2000, at least 9 or 12. I think we would have gotten
Right.
some more
Sure.
better effects.
Yeah. All right, Anthony, what are your thoughts on this one?
I agree with Bert on this one.
Do
I
you?
think it's
Okay.
the best one.
Really?
Yeah, it's the
Wow.
best
Okay.
one.
Wow.
I also like um that Magneto keeps saying, I think he says this in this second one and this one, there's a war coming. And I
Mm.
think the war he mentions is the war in Days of Future Past.
Sure.
I think
Sure.
that's what he's talking
Yeah.
about. So
He knows the humans are coming
Oh,
after them eventually.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So yeah, the best
oh,
one in my opinion.
nice.
Best of the
Okay.
first three.
Okay. Okay.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Let's move on now to X-Men Origins Wolverine, released May 1st, 2009. This one holds a special place in my heart just because it was the first midnight showing I ever went to. So yeah, I was really excited when this. I was again grew up a huge X-Men fan, and when I heard this was coming out, I was old enough to drive myself to the theater and go see it with some friends. So yeah, the fever pitch of the anticipation was quite high, and I liked it on that first viewing. Every other viewing, it's just gotten worse and worse for me.
Oh,
Um, the opening scene, I think, is great. It's another one of those good openers where it's kind of this emotional hook of young Wolverine learning about his true parentage and his half brother and
mhm.
this rage that's within him. All this, it's just played very well. And then it goes into that awesome montage of him and
Yeah.
Sabretooth
Yes,
throughout all the
yes.
wars throughout history. It's one of my favorite sequences in any of these movies. It's just
Yeah.
so well shot. The filmic kind of soft, visual that it has to the cinematography is great, and it's just really well done. Um, then it just falls apart for me basically right after that. Jumping
Mhm.
6 years, him living in Canada with this woman. Um, and Sabretooth attacks and the movie I feel like is another have kind of the same problem that I have with X3 is that it's too much going on. I feel like this should have been very simple. A very simple revenge story is really what this movie should have been. And that's kind of what it is at the heart, but you got him with Team X and all those mutants to introduce. And then he's going and he's meeting Gambit and he's meeting all these new characters constantly. And it just there's so much in the film that I feel like it gets kind of buckles under the weight of its own, storytelling.
Mm.
I also find the CGI here to be absolutely atrocious. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was the budget or the time restraints or what. His claws look worse than they looked in X1. I don't know why the claws look so bad in several
Mm.
of the scenes. Um, yeah, a lot of it just really doesn't work for me. And again, it's another one where emotionally it just kind of falls flat because of too much going on. I feel like maybe too many cooks in the kitchen, maybe too many producers saying, "Hey, we got to put this in, and we got to make sure there's a lot of mutants in there and a lot of big action." And it just feels like a movie full of studio notes. They weren't really trying to tell one director's story of this character and his origin story, which is really compelling and it's a great story. But it just kind of it just doesn't really work for me. What does work, of course, is Hugh Jackman, who's always great, and Liev Schreiber. Their performances are
Yeah.
fantastic. I mean, their dynamic is great. And again, that's the heart of the movie that I feel like it kind of loses sight of, kind of in the middle, especially. And it kind of comes back at the end a little bit, but it's kind of too little too late at that point. Of course, it's been talked to death. What they did to Deadpool was awful, and it's been made fun of across, the other movies and everything. So I won't talk much about that, but those are kind of my thoughts on X-Men Origins Wolverine, just kind of a big letdown overall. Anthony, why don't you go first on this one? Tell us what you think.
Yeah, the only thing, in my opinion, bad about this movie is maybe the CGI.
Okay.
Like, especially when Sabretooth is chasing Cyclops down the hallway in the school.
Wasn't that good?
Hallway. And then Deadpool, obviously. They butchered it. Sewing his mouth shut. Why?
Right.
That's not his character.
Mm,
So I don't know.
yeah.
However,
Go ahead.
however, when you watch this, you'll understand why Logan doesn't remember his
Right.
past in X-Men and X2.
Yeah.
It makes
Yes.
sense when you watch this before
Yeah.
those movies. It's more of a complete story.
Sure.
Kind of.
Sure.
So, yeah.
I hear you. Bert, what are your thoughts on this one?
I really like this one a lot. I get what you're saying, that there's a lot in it, and
Yeah.
I do have my own. I mean, I could give the same criticism, except I don't knock it as much,
Okay.
because I still feel like we get a lot of great stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like to see how Stryker kind of first gets involved in Logan's situation and picks him up
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. There's some really beautiful locations here, cinematography. Various decades are covered here. That first scene, I mean, is like nothing we get anywhere else in the series. With
Yeah.
the two boys and the
Right.
it looks really great.
Mhm.
And there's fairly epic fight at the end. The CGI, yeah, I mean, I get that. I like the twist involving. I won't say it since you didn't, but
Sure.
that's.
Yeah, we can go
that's an
spoilers here if
interesting-
you want. That's fine.
Okay, yeah, where we find out his wife didn't die. Well, is it his girlfriend or his wife? I can't remember.
Yeah, fiance, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Ryan Reynolds, I don't think all of it's that bad, frankly. I've heard people say how atrocious it is, but like, I mean, there's a few things I laugh at. Like this wasn't even actually in the movie, but in the behind the scenes, he's talking about fighting with Wolverine, must be, and he makes a crack. He says circumcision should never be an accident. Sorry, I didn't say it the way he did, so it's not as funny as he would have said it, but
Right.
you know how he is. So in his
Sure.
so I had to jot that down because it's really funny. So not everything works. The guy in the fat suit doing the boxing, I mean, stuff like that. I'm like, what?
Did you just call me Blob?
Yeah.
So I've got some issues with it too.
Yeah.
There's quite a few things actually, but I still really like this film.
Okay. Good. All right. Well, we're going to move right along to X-Men First Class, released June 3rd, 2011. This film was another one that I highly anticipated because it was going to be so different. It was kind of not quite a reboot, I guess maybe a soft reboot of the franchise, going back, kind of a prequel, telling the backstory, all new cast, which is always difficult to do, especially when you have iconic actors in iconic roles like Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen. How are you going to, make that work? But man, they nailed it. I mean, the casting here is off the charts good. I think James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender are absolutely phenomenal. In every scene, they bring so much weight to the proceedings, the interactions with those characters, the relationship they develop is great. And it really, to me, enhances the original films. It really brought something new when it comes to the style. This is going back to the 60s. So they kind of looked at a lot of 60s films, particularly a lot of James Bond films from the 60s, and kind of tried to emulate that style. Again, this one's much more vibrant in its color scheme, the costumes, things like that. And it fits because it's harkening back to an earlier time, the era in which the X-Men themselves were created, which is cool. I like the historical setting of the Cuban Missile Crisis being the kind of focal point of this film. That the big finale is just spectacular. Really, is impressive as far as what they do with the effects and the cinematography and the action. It all works really well. Great supporting cast: Jennifer Lawrence, Nicholas Hoult, Kevin Bacon as the villain here, who is kind of another sort of odd choice for your main bad guy in a comic book movie, but he really pulls it off. I think he brings a lot of charm and charisma to that role. and
Good
is
actor.
also menacing and scary and very dangerous. His power is really unique and really cool.
Mhm.
What the way they visualize that is great too. So all in all, this one hits really hard emotionally for me, again, because of the way they set up the characters and develop those relationships and take the time to do that. That by the time you get to the end, you're just like, distraught over what's going on. It's really, really good. So, really big fan of this. Also, a huge fan of the score. I think the themes here, especially Magneto's theme, is great. Henry Jackman did the score, and he just did a phenomenal
Mm.
job doing that. So, yeah, I like that the story, even though there's quite a few characters here, it really stays focused on Charles and Eric and their dynamic in that
I
relationship.
think the original title was going to be X-Men Origins Magneto.
That's right. Yeah, X-Men Origins was going to be a
Oh,
whole
that's
line of
right.
films.
Mhm.
Magneto was going to get one, Gambit was going to get one. They were going to do all these different origin movies. And then when X-Men Origins Wolverine didn't do as well critically, they decided to do First Class and kind of, bring it back. So yeah, big fan of First Class. Bert, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, some really good stuff in this one. I think Kevin Bacon's great as the villain. I really like how Eric and Charles meet, and once again, they nail for the same roles. They nail two tremendous actors again. Younger ones this time, but
Right.
yeah, wow. And the tie into the major historical events is really cool.
Mhm.
There's some really good stuff here. Just there's nothing here that there's no action that's like jaw dropping, or there's nothing
Mhm.
that it comes anywhere near, say, the emotional involvement with as comparison Days of Future Past, because that one
Okay.
really takes it to, we'll talk about it, but it goes
Okay.
places.
Okay. Gotcha. Great. Anthony, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one
The
a lot as well. Honestly, the same. I feel the same way with this movie as I do with X-Men Origins Wolverine. It sort of just enhances those three movies still. So
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's very cool. And um, the relationship that Charles and Eric had,
Mm.
you know,
Mhm.
before they became, rivals, I guess, sort
Yeah.
of. They
They meet
weren't
with a hug,
always,
right?
huh? What did you say?
They kind of meet with a hug,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
An
Um,
embrace, sort of
Right, right.
underwater, fighting.
Yeah.
yeah. We know they weren't always, or we didn't know they were always friends, I guess. I guess they talk about it,
Sure.
but we actually see the relationship they had before the original
Right.
movies where they're not where they're against each other, kind
Yeah,
of. So
exactly. Great.
good movie.
Great stuff, guys. All right, let's move on to the next one. The Wolverine, released July 26th, 2013. This is another standalone movie about Hugh Jackman's character. Brought in a new creative team. James Mangold, one of my favorite writer directors, wrote the screenplay, co-wrote the screenplay, and directed this film. And this, I think, is fantastic. I really like this movie a lot. I like it more every time I watch it, actually. It's finding Logan after X3, and, the X-Men, we don't know. Did they disband? What happened? We don't really know. But he's living in the Yukon alone, with the wolves and the bears. um, and he gets drawn into this conflict in Japan from an old friend. And again, they go back to World War II, right? It's like kind of a theme throughout these movies. Go back to World War II and find out this moment in time where Logan was a prisoner of war when the bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, and he meets this young soldier, and basically saves his life. And so that young man grows up and becomes one of the most powerful individuals in Japan, and he wants to say goodbye, basically, is what he's told. And so he's brought over to Tokyo, and then he learns very quickly that there's more to this than meets the eye. There's a vast conspiracy going on, and it's really interesting, just the family dynamic, there with Yashida and his son and his granddaughter, um, and the kind of politics and all of it, and it's great. It's a great kind of backdrop and setting for the story. It's a very fish out of water kind of story for Wolverine. He's out of his element in this society, and it's just another great performance by Hugh Jackman. It's a story a lot about focusing in on his immortality. That's really at the center of the story.
Right.
This character is offering him an honorable death, basically, is what he's offering him. And so it deals a lot with pain and loss and guilt and grief and all those different themes that are just so tailor-made for the character Wolverine. And so it's a again, I think it's a great screenplay. It's all played very well by the actors. I like all of the cast members involved. Has some fantastic action. The bullet train scene to me is another one of the all-time great
That's probably my
X-Men.
favorite scene.
It's a great sequence. And I learned that David Leitch, who just directed The Fall Guy, he did Deadpool 2, and he did the movie Bullet Train starring Brad Pitt. He was the second unit director on this.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
So yeah, it's like, hey, remember that one scene in the Wolverine? I want to make a whole movie like that. And that's what he did. So pretty cool. Great movie though. Really enjoy this. Emotional storytelling, character centric. The finale maybe gets a little too bombastic, too kind of crazy, but I'm a big fan of this one. So all right, so those are my thoughts on the Wolverine. Anthony, what did you think of this one?
I really like this.
Yeah?
Yeah. One of definitely one of my favorites.
Okay, cool.
An interesting thing about the villain is he's actually a Daredevil villain originally. He was
Oh,
a
that's
Daredevil
right.
villain
Yeah.
before he became like
Hmm.
a villain for like other heroes. He was a Daredevil villain, which I thought was pretty cool.
That is cool.
I have a theory about this movie.
Okay, go for it.
So you know when the Silver Samurai he takes Logan's and adamantium, I think, or
Yeah.
like his immortality, I guess.
The bone marrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's how the adamantium sort of poisoning him and Logan and all of that. I feel like that's how
Interesting.
he got it.
That's a good
poisoned.
theory. Yeah, that would make sense.
Like he became weaker, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that before.
Mhm.
Cool. Any other things you want to mention about favorite scene? You said the bullet train scene was your favorite scene.
That's my favorite scene.
Okay.
Also, when another one of my favorite scenes is when Logan and Mariko go to the Love Hotel.
That's a good moment.
Yeah.
That's a good moment. The mission to space.
Yes.
All right, Bert, give us your thoughts on the Wolverine.
So I like the Wolverine. I'm glad they tried something different. I always like when they do that. But I just don't know that this one equates to, among the best of the series. So the direction is fine. I don't really feel like there's a lot that makes the location, this unique setting of Japan, stand out. It's a kind of a very glossy glimpse of Japan. Does that make sense?
Sure.
I feel like there's a lot of sets.
I want to go there. After watching this, I'm like, I want to go there. Because what I do like about it, though, is that we get the city and we get that little seaside village that they're at. So I feel like there is variety in it at least. But I guess I get what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, they didn't do an awful job of it. I'm not saying that. You understand.
Sure.
So that bullet train scene, when I rewatched all of these, that was the only scene that I had to hit rewind and watch it twice because it was that good. And I will say, I watched it in 3D. 3D is great in the whole movie. But that scene, that train, it looks a mile long, like in 3D.
That's
and
cool.
if there's a demo scene, I could easily pop that one in and show someone, and they'd probably go, sign me up.
Right.
TV. We can't get a TV anymore.
Right.
So I like the surprise ending. That was unexpected. Saw this when it came out, but I remembered almost nothing about it. I was really surprised.
Okay.
So the character stuff, like the plot, just to me was just it's just okay. I don't feel like I'm really drawn in and connect a lot with these characters actually. But the thing is, like, I'd probably watch Wolverine read the phone book. So there's enough good stuff here that I do like the film quite a bit.
Okay, cool. Great. All right, guys, now we're moving on to none other than X-Men Days of Future Past, released May 23rd, 2014. Based on the comic book of the same name. By the way, First Class is also the title of a specific comic book, but they adapt them. They're very much adaptations. They're not direct, adaptations of the source material, but they do a great job with it here because, I mean, this is the big event film. If there is a big event film for the X-Men, it's definitely this one, bringing together the young and old casts,
Yeah.
in this epic time travel extravaganza. It's tons of, big exciting action sequences here. We've got the future scenes with the original cast fighting these Sentinels. That's kind of the whole plot here, is revolving around these giant robots that have been sent to destroy all of the mutants. Magneto was right. Hashtag Magneto was right. um, uh, they do a great job with the Sentinels. They're extremely scary. I mean, they're really big, menacing, creatures. They feel kind of like creatures, really, attacking the X-Men and adapting to all of their different powers. And
Yeah.
of course, the story is about them trying to stop Mystique, from executing Bolivar Trask, played by the great Peter Dinklage, who's excellent here. Um, and this movie, there's so much going on here. Again, it's more characters than we've ever had before, but it's pretty well balanced. I mean, it really does
Mhm.
do a pretty good job giving us enough of the original cast, the future storyline, to kind of satisfy those fans, those of us who have kind of grown up with the movies, and the new cast, and really furthering their storyline and developing those characters. As that's what I was looking forward to with Days of Future Past. I wanted to know the first class cast. I wanted them to continue and have the storyline. And I think they do. And there's more time spent with them, certainly. I feel like the future scenes, they're kind of more of just a structural thing. I don't feel, I mean, obviously you had to pick, and I think they picked the right choice. Focusing on the younger cast, the older cast, they've kind of had their movies, but maybe I would have liked a little bit more with them. I don't know. It's always hard to balance that out. Again, I think they made the right choice focusing on the younger actors, though. So I like it. Again, lots of action here. I think there's some action in it that's maybe a little sloppy. There's a couple of moments, especially like in the past when Wolverine is fighting some of the kind of Gen 1 Sentinels, that it just looks a little sloppy, kind of, Other moments that are spectacular. Magneto grabbing the baseball stadium. I mean, all of that stuff is just insane to watch. So, really like this movie. Very well edited. I much prefer the Rogue cut. I don't know if either of you have seen the Rogue cut,
I
but
have not.
it's great. I really think it adds a lot to the movie. First of all, it adds a whole kind of subplot with the future storyline with Iceman, Magneto, and Professor X going to rescue Rogue, who's not even really in the original theatrical cut, but it is Anna
And they cut
Paquin
her out
back
to
as Rogue.
save time, right? That wasn't that it? To save time,
Yes,
runtime.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it cuts a good I think probably 15 minutes out of the movie. So but it's such a well done scene, and it's so well edited into the rest of the story. It feels seamless to me. I really never felt like, oh, this scene feels totally out of place. It just felt like a natural progression of the story.
Right.
So I don't again, I guess, they're worried about audiences are going to get too tired or whatever, but I get that, but I would have left it in. It's the movie, the version of the movie I watch every time I watch it now. So, huge fan of that cut of the movie. This is really more, whereas First Class was more Magneto's story, this is more Professor X's story. And McAvoy just knocks it out of the park. I mean, every scene he's in is just so intense, dramatic, emotional. The stuff he has
Yeah.
with Wolverine, the stuff he has with Beast, with Magneto. That scene of them on the plane is the scene that stands out to me as being the best scene in this movie. Um, so I really like this. I really like this movie. I maybe have a few more issues with it than some people do, but I still think it's very well made. I think really the MVP outside of the cast, the editing. The editing here, again, you want to balance both storylines, and I feel like they really managed to do that, especially in the road cut for me. But Bert, what are your thoughts on Days of Future Past?
Yeah, just everything is on point here. I feel like everything's firing. The Sentinels are, to me, they're kind of scary.
Yeah,
Almost a War of the Worlds ish. I get
right,
that
right,
vibe
sure.
from them. And so, I mean, I feel like the film actually does build some intensity involving, it really feels like it's impossible how they're going to get themselves out of this situation. The time travel stuff is a lot of fun. Um, Wolverine gets in a lot more situations. He's, I mentioned this about Steve Carell. But when Wolverine gets in these situations where he's uncomfortable and has to argue with people, we get some of the best stuff in the series. You know, we get a
Right.
lot of that here in pretty much every movie. Not so much the Wolverine.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much him playing off of someone for a little bit of comedic effect. But
Right.
here, a lot of that though, and yeah, then just incredibly sort of delicate scene with McAvoy and Patrick Stewart, where I mean, he's basically talking to himself, right?
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, but great stuff. Maybe the best acting I've seen from McAvoy, and that's saying a lot because he's a great actor.
For sure. For sure. Anthony, your thoughts on this one?
I thought this probably is the best X-Men movie, in
Okay.
my opinion.
Okay.
I like how they blend, the original and the new cast. I
Mhm.
thought that was pretty cool. I
Yeah,
think my favorite scene is probably when one of my favorite scenes is when Charles meets his older self.
Yeah.
That was
Great
really
scene.
good. And Magneto lifting up the baseball stadium. That was very cool.
Yeah.
yeah,
For sure. Great
yeah.
stuff. All right. Let's move right along then to the next film that was released, which was Deadpool, released February 12th, 2016, because now he has admitted this. He actually admitted this at Comic-Con this weekend that Ryan Reynolds was the one who leaked the test footage that they put
Oh
out
no.
online.
He always
Um,
said he was 70% sure he did it, but now he actually knows.
I was 100%. Yeah, they did some test footage for this, just with a very small budget, and it, got leaked online. And people went nuts because they were like, "We got to see this movie." To me, it works better as a short film. I like that test footage. It's what they base the highway sequence on, which is kind of what starts out the movie.
Okay.
And that sequence, I think, is fantastic. It's so well done. The effects look good. The action is spectacular. I love the opening credits.
Oh yeah.
They're all so funny. That was great. The fact that the people involved said they were okay with that is kind of cool.
Yeah,
So, I just don't think it's not my sensibility for humor is really what it comes down to for this one. Where if you like this type of comedy, you're gonna love it. I just don't think it really works. Technically, I do think it's a bit flat visually. I think there's kind of some bland. It's kind of it's got a more of a washed out look to it, kind of a gray, kind of flat look. I wasn't a huge fan of the visual style either. Camera work is good though. I do like the camera work. Um, the action, I think it's pretty good throughout, especially that highway scene though, it just really stands out. I kind of feel like they peaked too early a little bit, and the rest of the movie, the action isn't quite on that level. CGI work is fairly good throughout. The end of it kind of just becomes a big CGI mess a little bit to me, but again, I think if you're in this for this type of humor and comedy and you like Ryan Reynolds in this role, which again, I admit he's born to play this. This character is just like right up his alley. I can't see anyone else playing the role, but it's just not my thing. It's just not what I'm into. It's not what I gravitate towards. So let's go to the Deadpool fans. Anthony, why don't you start us off? What do you think about Deadpool? First one.
The first time I saw this, I was amazed. It was
Yeah.
so funny. It does have a good story, honestly. I like the story.
yeah, yeah,
I quote this movie constantly.
Yeah.
It's just really good. I like how I guess this is technically the first X-Men movie to go more comic accurate with the suit.
Oh,
Because
sure. Oh,
Deadpool
yeah.
wears
Definitely.
the suit, so
Yeah.
yeah, all in all, really good.
Yeah, it's cool that Ryan Reynolds agreed to do that because most actors they
Yes.
want their face shown, throughout the most
Yeah.
of the movie. But even when his face is shown, it's
Mhm.
Wade Wilson's face is not pretty to look at. So,
Yeah.
Bert, give us your thoughts on this first Deadpool movie.
yeah. Well, there aren't many movies, even comedies, where I'm pretty much laughing from start to finish. And the thing is, a lot of it is very crass, and so
Yeah.
I like about 80% of the humor, but that's
Okay.
enough where I'm still laughing. I mean,
Sure.
almost everything he says is some kind of
Right.
funny way to say it or a joke or something like that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really you don't really get tired of it. That I don't, at least, So I got to say that this is really a comedy, but what they bring in with the other X-Men and stuff is really great. I like this goes to part of the comedy too, but I personally love the meta stuff.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
there's a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'll just throw out a couple there that were notable. at one point, Colossus says, "Let's go talk to the professor." Deadpool says, "McAvoy or Stewart?" These timelines are so confusing. And
Yeah.
then there's another one. Uh, Deadpool says, "That's a big house. It's funny. I only see two of you." Meaning other X-Men. It's almost like the studio couldn't afford another X-Men. So that kind of stuff
Yeah.
makes me laugh every time.
Yeah.
I don't know, and maybe it's not for everybody. So
Sure.
and there's some really cool shots. TJ Miller, is it TJ Miller? Was he
Yep.
the one in the bar?
Weasel.
Yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. And again, 80% of his stuff is really funny. And it really is a compelling story. I mean, he's facing cancer. He's looking for this desperate solution. So it doesn't completely follow through on that because there's so much comedy,
Yeah.
and it kind of flies in the face of the story they're trying to tell. If I had
Right.
to knock it a little bit,
Hmm.
but either way, I mean, if the film's gonna make me laugh for an hour and a half, that's some good stuff.
Excellent. All right,
Yeah.
guys. Moving right along now to X-Men Apocalypse, released May 27th, 2016, based on the comic book storyline titled Age of Apocalypse. This movie, it's kind of the most frustrating X-Men movie in many ways for me because so much potential, right? Coming off of Days of Future Past, introducing this new villain who's like Apocalypse is basically, I liken him to like the Thanos of the X-Men world. He's like the big villain that they all have to go
Gotcha.
up against. Um,
Gotcha.
the most powerful, of all the villains they face. Um, and they really dropped the ball here. I mean, the movie, first of all, I counted when it starts at least 7 different storylines. I mean, you have the Mystique storyline, you have the Charles storyline, the Eric storyline, the Cyclops storyline, the Apocalypse storyline, Quicksilver and his story, and then Moira, who's brought back Rose Byrne as Moira McTaggart from First Class, which I was happy to see her back, but she's kind of got her own storyline. So it starts off with all these disparate storylines going on all over the world, literally. And it tries to bring them all together. Some of them it succeeds, some of them it doesn't. Uh, it's just kind of a mess, honestly. This movie, it really, it has also, they set up so well in Days of Future Past, the Quicksilver Magneto relationship. I thought, that's an interesting thing to set up this father-son dynamic that he's going to have now with him.
Right.
And Apocalypse is kind of all about that, but it never is resolved. It's never even really mentioned directly to Magneto. It's kind of just baffling. I don't really understand the writers what their idea was there. Like, we're gonna set it up in Days of Future Past, and then we're gonna set it up again in Apocalypse, and it never goes anywhere. So that's one of the big glaring issues with this movie for me. Um, the Quicksilver scene, and Days of Future Past is great, and here it's good.
Yeah.
It's just kind of overdone almost in this one, where it's like,
Hmm.
if he's that powerful, why is anything a problem for the X-Men if they have them on their side, So I just feel like that was kind of, it's kind of a fun scene, but it just logically doesn't really work through. Visuals are kind of uneven here again. I think a lot of the effects are great. There's some huge, like, I mean, disaster movie, Roland Emmerich level, like, destruction scenes here, but it's again kind of weightless, I just don't feel the gravity of the situation. And again, I think this comes down to Apocalypse and the way he's written. He's just kind of a weak character. His motivation is very weak. He's just very one note, wants to just destroy the world. Just one of those bad guys, his backstory, I feel like that opening scene with him is kind of an interesting scene, but they don't capitalize on it. They don't really set up any kind of, big motivation for him. So Oscar Isaac, I think, is a great actor. I just don't feel like they gave him enough in the screenplay to really play with. So kind of a letdown on that level too. The whole idea that these newer movies have of they kind of hop decades. The first one's in the 60s, Days of Future Past in the 70s, this one's in the 80s. It's a great concept. I just feel like jumping that much time, there's so much that happens with the characters that you kind of are lost at the beginning. Like he's got a family at the beginning of this movie that we've never met. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they came from. And they try to have this emotional moment with him and the family. And halfway works because the performance is so good from Michael Fassbender, but it just kind of comes out of nowhere. And it's like, why are they doing that? I feel like they're bringing the character back to square one, back to the 1940s childhood trauma that he faced there, and they're just redoing that again. So it's just, again, I don't really get some of the decisions made. When you have such a great cast, you've set up the story so well. Yeah, they just really, really failed here. Even the action, some of it's kind of cool, but a lot of it I just really don't care because the characters are kind of just have fallen flat in this film. So not a big fan of Apocalypse. Bert, give us your thoughts on this one. What do you think?
Well, I think I used to like this film, and now I'm not sure after hearing that rundown. No, I actually do like this film quite a bit, but I
Okay.
get the criticisms. In
Yeah.
fact, um, you mentioned some of the good stuff about it. I'll mention a couple things that don't work for me, um, but I do overall like the film. So the casting, I don't find that Sophie Turner does as good of a job as what we need out of Jean.
Mm.
Um, this movie and the one after it. It's just kind of disappointing. I think I like I can't think of her name. The place.
Famke Janssen.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think she's so good and so kind of graceful and
Mm.
powerful, like an
Hmm.
X3, like the way that all comes together. I love that stuff.
Mm.
And it's so epic. I think in my mind that I don't mind Sophie Turner in general. I just feel like this is maybe a miscast.
Mm.
And then Storm kind of looks like a discount Storm. uh, the kid playing Nightcrawler, that just looks he just looks odd. Am I the only one that thinks he just something just I don't know if it's the makeup. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I think the
And
makeup, I was going to mention actually the makeup with Mystique even looks cheaper for some reason. It just, it's even like a different shade of blue than she had in the other one. I don't know
yeah,
why. I don't know if, I don't know what happened there, but yeah, it doesn't look as good for sure.
yeah, Mystique. I mean, Mystique almost looks like she has clown hair. Like the colors, like why go to that extreme? Maybe I have the richness turned up too much on my TD or something. I don't know.
Right.
But so anyway, it sounds like I hate the film, but honestly, it is kind of all over the place. But I think there's some really good stuff here. It's certainly not the best in the series, but I do like it.
Okay. Okay. Anthony, what are your thoughts on this one?
I actually do like
Okay.
this. It's not great, but
Mm.
I do think it's good. I actually like Apocalypse in this. I feel
Mm.
like he is sort of the Thanos of the X-Men universe.
Mhm.
He's like all powerful. Then we realize he's actually not that powerful when Jean shows up and
Right.
yeah,
Right.
kind of destroys him.
Yeah.
Um, I also like Logan cameos in this.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
The
yeah,
Weapon X. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I thought this was pretty good.
Okay.
Oh, and the end where the X-Men are wearing their comic accurate suits. That was pretty
Finally.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was cool, but they didn't do that in the next movie.
Yeah.
Like, why?
I don't know.
Why? I don't get it.
Yeah, strange choices. Again, it's just a lot of the decision making behind the scenes. I feel like kind of just I don't know if there wasn't unity or what. It's just kind of an amalgamation of a bunch of different things that doesn't coalesce for me. So yeah. Anyways, let's move on to the next film, and that would be Logan, released March 3rd, 2017. Logan is the film that, Hugh Jackman, after playing the character for so long, decided to leave it behind, to hang up the claws and go out with a bang. And so he recruited James Mangold again, who directed and wrote The Wolverine, to come on board and write and direct Logan, which is, kind of the send off for the character. It's based on the Old Man Logan storyline, very loosely adapted from that storyline. The film has a great sort of neo-Western vibe. It's really leaning into that kind of idea of the old lone gunslinger coming back for one final, ride. Um, I really like where we find Logan here. He's just broken. He's battered. He's weary. He's the last surviving X-Man. And he's taking care of Professor X. And it's such a intense film, both you know, from the violence, which, you know, this got the R rating, so they could go all out with the gore and the blood and really show what this character is capable of. And also just from an emotional standpoint, it really goes deep into the relationship between Logan and Charles. That's really at the heart of this, especially at the beginning, and then it kind of becomes more about Logan and this young girl, who's essentially his daughter. It's a you know clone of Logan. And so those relationships to me, and it's a road movie, so you kind of get them on the road together, going through these different scenarios and situations. Even you get to see them. I like the scene in the convenience store, you know, where it's just kind of she's going off on this guy and he has to come in and kind of, you know, teach her how to behave. And it's just a great dynamic. Those three characters have such a great dynamic through this film. Um, on the villain side, we have Richard E. Grant coming in as this character. I think his name's Dr. Rice. Uh, and the character Boyd Holbrook plays Donald Pierce. I think are both great actors playing, you know, great roles. You know, they're secondary roles though. This is really focused all in on Logan, and you know the the only way you can end a character like this, you know, who's had this such a violent past, is with a violent end, right? It's kind of that poetic journey, poetic justice of, you know, the way he ends up in this film is great. It's really it's very very impactful. The scene with him and Laura at the end of the movie it is just one of my favorite scenes in any of these films. And the action throughout it is great. You know, we really get some excellent moments. What they did with Professor X and his power, the way he's dealing with dementia and his power and the way that manifests and
Yeah.
all of that is just it's really incredible. It's something that I just was not expecting at all, and it works really well. The movie's beautifully shot. The score is great. The effects, I think, are seamless, really. I mean, I don't even see the effects in this. A lot of it was done practically, that's why. So it's a great, you know, ultimately a redemption story for Logan after years of just, you know, living again a life of violence, of, you know, living as a soldier and then as an X-Man and all the rest of it. He's kind of it's inescapable. And so where he ends up here, I think, is thematically powerful, you know, emotional, and it's one of my favorites of all of them. So, huge fan of Logan. Bert, what do you think about this one?
Well, this definitely feels more like a drama than most of the others. It's like this one's a bit of a different genre
Yeah,
than prior films.
right.
And there is a lot. I get kind of frustrated with this film, frankly, because there's a
Mm,
lot of really great stuff, and then there's a lot of stuff that just. I mean, the film just overall is kind of depressing,
yeah, sure.
you know. And it's a little long. I feel like.
Mm,
But it's really what I didn't really love is it's kind of an unceremonious end to Charles. You know, it's
mm,
I you know having and especially having him go out at the hand of a clone of Wolverine, right?
right.
And then I just didn't feel like they like really this is the last moments we're gonna see
Yeah.
of Charles after all of these movies. I just didn't feel like it paid much. It didn't feel very epic, I guess. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying?
okay. Yeah.
And then that ending too is kind of a gut punch. So I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's not fitting either. I'm
Hmm.
just saying ultimately, there's some great stuff, but um, I don't know. I don't know that it needed comedy. I just it's just tough when you put me in a world where it's just there's kind of no hope and it's kind of just depressing the whole movie. It's just tough to get past that. I feel like maybe the brighter colored X-Men movies are more for me. You know?
Sure, sure. And it's funny you mentioned that because I actually watched this in black and white. That literally takes all the color out.
Oh,
And,
nice. Okay,
I
yeah.
thought it was maybe even better because it really just,
Really,
again, it fits the tone, right? I mean, it
it
just
does.
really, it
Yeah,
puts you in that mode of like,
it's weak.
this is heavy,
It's
this is weighty, you know,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
dramatic, it's intense. And yeah, that's what they were aiming for. So if that's not your thing, yeah, it's definitely not going to work. And I could see how if you're a fan of the earlier movies, even though a lot of them are, you know, the X-Men movies generally are a little darker, a little more grounded films, but
Yeah,
this one definitely takes it up a notch, right? So
yeah.
I can
Well,
definitely see that.
yeah, and it's just still a thumbs up.
Sure,
It's
sure.
just you know not one of the best.
I gotcha. Anthony, give us your thoughts on this.
Definitely the most emotional
Yeah.
one. Probably out of all
Sure.
the X-Men movies. Honestly did shed a little tear at the end.
Yeah, for sure.
The only thing that would have made this movie better, though, because it was already a great movie, but the only thing that would have made it better is if it had a venomized T-Rex from the comic Ultimate Logan.
That's true.
If it had a
Yeah,
venomized T-Rex, it would have been so cool. But
that would have been
since Venom isn't in this movie or Spider-Man, or in the universe, I guess
right.
they didn't do that. And that would have been ridiculous, obviously.
It would have been. It would have been.
It still would have been cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great stuff. All right, guys, let's move into Deadpool 2. Deadpool 2 came out May 18th, 2018. I think this is a much better Deadpool movie than the first one. Ups the ante when it comes to the action, when it comes to the visuals, the camera work, the effects. I even think it's a little funnier. I think the narrative is more compelling. I think Josh Brolin is wonderful as Cable. Great casting there. David Leitch, I just think is a better director. He's got more of a vision behind this movie, and it really works for me. Again, some of the humor I don't care for, but it works for me up until the end, where he gets Cable's time travel device and undoes basically the entire movie that we just watched. So that for me was like, oh, it kind of just, the bottom dropped out of all the kind of emotional impact and storytelling that we just got. So yeah, that for me is why I'm not a fan of Deadpool 2 as much as I wanted to be. But we've got two Deadpool fans here, so let's hear how you guys think. Anthony, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, this is definitely better than the first one.
Okay.
More funnier, more humor. It's still, I think it still has a good story, with Vanessa dying and he has to try to live with that, I guess.
Right.
It is cool that he goes back in time and saves her, though. I know you said you didn't really care for that, but I think that's cool. Like, who wouldn't want to save if you have the chance to save
Sure.
one of your loved ones, I guess.
Right.
Who wouldn't do that, you know? The end where Deadpool is dying. It's so long and so just okay. At first, it's like funny. Then it doesn't get fun. It gets less funny, but then it gets funny again because it's just so long. So yeah. Definitely good.
Okay, yeah. Great. Bert, what do you think about this one?
When you said that, it reminded me of the beginning of Spaceballs with the ship, right?
Right.
First it's funny, and then it's like, okay, that's enough. But then it gets funny again.
Yeah.
Like 4 minutes in, and they're still panning across the ship. So good. Yeah, this is an upgrade. This is an excellent movie. Really, to me, what it comes down to is Cable. I think he's one of my favorite characters in maybe all of superhero movies. He's very complex.
Mm-hmm.
His I guess you could say powers are very organic and feel more real than just I can do this and something big happens. Right. It's a very physical role. I just think it's tremendous. The fact that he also plays Thanos is kind of interesting too.
Right.
Yeah, this one's very funny all the way through again. And again, I like about 80% of that humor. And then the action, though, there's some incredible fight scenes. Some we see Deadpool's body contorted and twisted and all kinds of crazy things that I haven't really seen before. And the stunts here are just really incredible. That scene where they're transporting the prisoners, it's kind of bonkers, but it's just that is a jaw-dropping action scene, Yeah. So I like this one a lot.
Excellent. Great stuff. All right, guys, let's jump right in now to Dark Phoenix, released June 7th, 2019. This is the continuation of the X-Men franchise with the new cast. This one I think is underrated. I really like this, actually. I think it handles the Dark Phoenix story better than X3 because it's squarely focused on Jean. Jean Grey is the main character of the film. There's no question about it. She's in, most of the scenes in the film. And I really liked what they did opening up with her backstory. getting that all fleshed out, how she came to be at Xavier's school, which we, didn't get in Apocalypse. Apocalypse, she's just already there, and we see, Cyclops join. But I thought that was all really effective. This one again goes for more of a psychological drama vibe than a lot of the other movies do, because it really is focused on the characters, I think, first and foremost. Um, there are issues though. The issues with this movie, I think, come with maybe trying to be too comic accurate, which is rare for a comic book fan like me to say, but I think trying to bring in the aliens, the Dabari, was actually a bad move. I don't think they should have done that, because it takes a lot away from the other characters that we really care about and want to know more about.
Yeah.
Um, Again, I appreciate it. I appreciate they tried to do it at least, to be more comics accurate, but they maybe could have done it in a different way, maybe, and it would have worked. It feels like its own separate movie that's trying to force its way in.
Right.
Um, I really like the opening scene on the X jet going up into space. We're on space missions now. That whole thing I think was fun. The use of all the different team members and their powers. I thought all of that was just really dynamic and interesting. I think the effects here are also very good, throughout the whole movie. I think they look really good. It's a good looking film. Um, the acting performances, I think, are really good. I actually really like Sophie Turner in this movie, much better than
Really.
she was in
Yeah.
Apocalypse. I think here, I think she really comes into her own in this role. She's
It
really
is better.
she's got a lot of to play here too, because she's really one of these tormented characters that's going through a lot. A lot of scenes with her just breaking down and crying, or she has to be really angry, or she just has a lot she has to play, and she does, I think, a really good job. Ty Sheridan gets a much bigger role here as Cyclops, and I think he does a very good job too.
Yeah.
James McAvoy is playing a unique version of Professor X, who's kind of, very arrogant and, dealing with a lot of hubris there, which I thought was interesting for him to play. So all the relationships and the character dynamics, I think, really work. Nicholas Hoult as Beast has an interesting role there as well, and he kind of goes to the dark side a little bit, especially after, what happens to Mystique, and their relationship. Um, I think Michael Fassbender also is great. I loved seeing him in Genosha, which is, in the comics, it's its own sovereign country. Here, it's kind of, we see like the beginnings of it. Um, I thought that worked really well too. And so all the characters, all the motivations, all work for me. I think it's very well written. It's just certain elements, again, that whole alien plot line just feels a little out of place for me. There's not a ton of action outside of that first scene. There's kind of a little scuffle like on the streets of New York. And then there's the big train scene at the end, which I think the train scene is actually another one of my favorite action set pieces in any of these films. I think it's all handled really well and is really exciting. Um, so I like it a lot more than a lot of people. A lot of people give this movie a hard time, but I think it's pretty well done. Also, a great score by none other than Hans Zimmer.
I was
He did
surprised when
this.
I saw that. Hans Zimmer,
I know.
really?
He really did the score of it. I think it's great. So, um, I'm a pretty big fan of this. I really like it. I like it a lot more than a lot of people. So, I think it works well as a conclusion to the whole saga. So, Bert, you want to give us your thoughts on Dark Phoenix?
Yeah, I like this a lot. I still have some of the casting issues. Yeah, Sophie Turner's she's a little better in this one. I almost think, who would have been good as Jean was the main alien. She's blonde. What's her name? Jessica
Good
Chastain.
Chastain, yeah,
I think she would have been a good choice for Jean, but
she would have.
whatever.
Yeah.
Ship has sailed. Uh, yeah, I finished this film and I really enjoyed the score, and I'm not kidding. I said it sounded a lot like Hans Zimmer, but it was really good. So I looked it up because I was going to add it to my I have YouTube Music, and
Yeah,
it is Hans Zimmer. I'm like,
it
oh, okay, well that
is.
kind of makes sense.
Right, right.
But probably the most memorable score, other than X-Men One. There's a couple like the opening track by
Yeah,
Michael Kamen. It's absolutely fantastic.
yeah.
So yeah, there's lots of different locations here that are good. But at the beginning, that space scene, I'm not really sure that that works so well because, and they kind of make a little bit of joke about it, like, oh, we're going to space. But it really, they probably should have been a little more set up than all of a sudden you're astronauts going into space with this plane, basically, or ship or whatever. But um, I didn't understand much about these aliens. I feel like they were really kind of one dimensional. We didn't, yeah, there's just wasn't a lot of roundedness to any particular one, even the main one played by Jessica Chastain. There's some really great battling here. A lot of the X-Men in this film are they're sort of pushed to their limits, or they might have like their powers matched by someone that can do the same thing they can. A lot of that kind of those
Yeah.
kind of showdowns was good. So I mean, the film is very entertaining. It just, to me, you've got a similar Phoenix plot like we had in X3, and I just think X3 nails it better. Part of that is the actors that are doing it, but I like X3 so much that I feel like this isn't quite as good.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Anthony, what are your thoughts on Dark Phoenix?
Probably the worst out of
Oh, really?
all
Okay.
the X-Men movies.
Okay.
I don't like I said about Apocalypse, I don't like how they they were setting up the comic accurate suits like they were going to wear them, but
Mm.
they didn't wear them in Dark Phoenix. They kind of um made the suits basic, kind of. They were
Yeah.
completely
They are
black, and then they had like
they are
yellow.
based on a comic book run,
Oh,
but
really?
they're not the traditional,
Yeah, yeah,
X-Men suits.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I didn't like it.
Didn't work for you?
No,
None of the action or anything?
no, and
Train scene?
also,
Train scene maybe? Is the
mm,
train scene cool? At
yeah,
least?
it was local. That scene was local,
Yeah.
but I don't like how Professor X was the villain. Really,
Yeah,
he
he def
kind of was the main villain of this.
yeah,
Not Phoenix, not the girl. I
right.
um
Gene.
no, I'm
Oh, you
talking
mean
about
the
Bailey.
alien?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It was real Professor X because he lied to Jean. I
Mm.
don't really understand why he had to do that. If he didn't lie, none of this would have happened, honestly.
Good
So
point. Lesson
yeah,
learned.
yeah. Lesson learned. The first thing that came to mind when I saw the aliens, though, I thought of the scrolls.
Well,
It's a
yeah,
rip off
I
of
think
the
they're
scrolls.
supposed to be the scrolls. I think in the comics they're the scrolls.
Okay.
Because yeah, they can shapeshift
Yeah,
and do all
yeah,
the stuff the scrolls can do.
yeah.
But Marvel Studios was using the
The
scrolls for
scrolls. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the Captain Marvel movie. So I think there was a rights issue. They couldn't use them. So they
Yeah.
had to find some other
It's
random.
all Marvel though, kind of.
Yeah, but it's Fox Marvel, so it's
Yeah,
not, it's
yeah.
not Disney Marvel. Um, okay, guys, let's move right along. We're going now into The New Mutants, released August 28th, 2020. Um, this was the last Fox X-Men movie. And it took a different approach. What was interesting about, the Fox X-Men movies, especially later on, they were really kind of branching out and trying new things. Logan, like we talked about, a very kind of much more dramatic, intense type of a movie. Even Dark Phoenix has a little bit more of a character, oriented vibe. And then this, which was doing a horror thing, was kind of doing a fun,
Yeah.
kind of intimate, small ensemble cast, teen horror kind of flick. And I think it works a lot. I really like a lot of elements of this film. I think the cast is pretty good, especially Anya Taylor-Joy, who everyone knows now is, kind of a household name already with Furiosa and everything else she's done. But she's the standout here. I mean, she is just on another level, I feel like. And it's the character too, right? I mean, she's playing a character with such a big personality that she really stands out. So she's great. I felt like I really got to kind of know the characters pretty well for the most part. Um, and it's one of those horror movies that it's a good, what I call a good like entry level horror. So if you're like, a young teen who's not really big into horror, this is a kind of good entry level movie to watch to kind of get a vibe for, what horror is and what it can do. And the fact that it's set in this world, um, kind of just elevates it for me as a comic book fan. Even though there aren't a lot of connections, right? There's like one mention of Professor X kind of there's a couple of it's just references to different things, but it tries to stand on its own 2 feet and work, which I appreciate. So kind of like it. I think there's some pretty good visuals here. There's some pretty good camera work. The effects are fairly good throughout it. Pretty good score. I think the score kind of helps. Some of the scarier moments. Um, And it also, I think, has a pretty good central character arc too. The whole idea of, facing fear and that type of thing. So it kind of works for me. It kind of doesn't. There's certain elements of it I don't enjoy as much. I don't think it's not like going to be one of my go-to horror movies necessarily. It's also not going to be one of my go-to X-Men movies, really, because there's not quite enough action, and it's not quite scary enough. So it doesn't hit on all cylinders all the time, but I think it's a solid enough watch to, enjoy one time. And if this is your thing, if you're a huge horror person, maybe you'll get more out of it than I did. But yeah, so I like that, it again, it from the franchise, it tries to branch out and take some risks, and shake it up, but it doesn't fully work for me. So those are my thoughts on it. Anthony, what do you think about the New Mutants?
This was too weird for me.
Too weird?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I said Dark Phoenix was the worst X-Men movie. However, this probably is the worst
Hmm.
out of all of them.
Hmm.
It's not even really an X-Men movie. You can't
Yeah.
really classify it as an X-Men movie because there's only one mention of the X-Men, but that's
Right.
just very brief.
Yeah.
They actually mentioned X-Men twice, but still very brief.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like an X-Men movie, and it was too weird, I think.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I didn't like it that much.
Any characters stand out or anything?
Not really, no.
No.
I mean, I guess Cannonball, maybe.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I like him too. That's the kid from Stranger Things.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
him. I like him a lot.
Hmm.
Okay, Bert or no? Go
Well,
ahead.
hold up. Interesting thing
Yeah.
about this movie, the score is by Mark Snow, who did Smallville, the
Oh
Smallville score.
really?
Yeah.
Oh
And
okay.
I was surprised when I saw that. I
Yeah,
was like,
that's cool.
the guy who did Smallville or the
Yeah.
music for Smallville
Mhm.
did this.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, this
That's great. Huge Smallville fan. All right, Bert, what do you think about the New Mutants?
Feel like this film is tied to the X-Men universe, kind of like how the film Joker is tied to Batman.
Sure.
I feel like it's like why is are you just doing that because why make the Joker like
Sure.
why tie it to Batman when it's not, is it just to get more people in the door? I don't really know. So this film, I watched it for the second time recently here, and unfortunately, as a horror movie, it's not scary, pretty much at all. Um, so then, as far as the story and the cast and the characters, they don't really do anything for me. I wouldn't say they're outright annoying. This does the overall film has the feel of kind of like a CW production, as far as not so much visually,
Yeah.
but just sort of the exchanges between the characters, I guess.
Mm.
And there's definitely some times where I'm kind of rolling my eyes to some of the things they say. The ending has like this random giant cocaine bear that comes out and shows up. It's this film, the release date was moved at least 3 times, and I think there's a reason why. I think they're
Yeah.
trying to probably edit this to make it. I don't think it really works though for me.
Yeah. It is the New Mutants is a comic book storyline, a comic book team, shoot off the X-Men, a younger group of X-Men called the New
Oh,
Mutants. And this is directly adapting the what's called the Demon Bear storyline. So it is all directly
okay.
from the comics, interestingly. But yeah, certain things don't translate as well to
Yeah,
film.
because why?
And
Why is the bear coming? Is there a
right,
motive? I don't know if the motivation's clear.
right. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting film. Again, I applaud them for trying something different. Doesn't mean it
Right,
necessarily fully
right.
worked, but I maybe like it a little bit more than both of you guys. So, all right, let's jump into the final film that we're going to be discussing today. Spoiler free, because one of us hasn't seen it yet, but we are going to briefly talk about Deadpool and Wolverine, released July 26, 2024. Highest opening day for any R-rated movie, $98 million. It's already, I think, made its budget back overseas. It's already over 200 million, pushing the
Wow.
Marvel Cinematic Universe over 30 billion at the
Wow.
box office, which is absolutely mind-boggling. So a hugely successful film already, even though it's only been out a few days. Um, for me, look, again, like I said about the Deadpool movies, it's not my cup of tea. when it comes to the comedy, the humor. I was hoping for, maybe in the MCU it'll be a little bit different. They have a different director, and maybe
Is this one R-rated
maybe
also?
it is. It is. It is. It did get the R
Yeah,
rating.
yeah.
That was a big thing. And I get it. A lot of the fans and obviously, the people involved wanted it to have the R rating to stay in line with the first two movies. To me, maybe it's a missed opportunity because I think if you had done a PG-13 Deadpool, it could have been really funny to see him try to be R-rated in a PG-13 movie.
Well, there's Once
Um,
Upon a Deadpool. Have you
Yeah,
seen
that's
that?
what I was about to say. There's one
I've
spot that
heard, I need to see that. I haven't seen that.
You
I've heard
should,
that's
because
pretty funny.
there's several minutes of new material where they do the well, I'll let you watch it, but they do kind
Yeah.
of a funny take on an '80s classic '80s movie. I'll just say
Okay.
that.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely want to check it out because I have heard that a lot of people like it, even people that don't necessarily like Deadpool 2 or the first Deadpool movie. So I definitely want to watch it. And again, I feel like, the MCU, they've only made PG-13 movies. So I felt like this was an opportunity for them to continue that tradition so that, more audiences can enjoy it and that
Uh,
they could have some opportunities to do some funny things with Deadpool trying to be, people trying to shut him up before he says certain words or something like that. So I thought they could have gotten creative with it. They just kind of stepped with, we're going to do the R-rated thing that we always do, and that's fine. And again, a lot of the fans wanted that, so I get that. So to me, it didn't really work on that level. The action is pretty good. I think it's pretty well shot. There's some shots that are really, really good that stand out. The effects are work is pretty well done as well. Um, Big surprises, big cameos, that were tons of fun as a fan of the Marvel comics to see. Um, Again, I feel like the story just kind of they set up a good story that I don't think they stick the landing. With the ending to me, it didn't quite work. It wasn't the X-Men are in the MCU now movie that I wanted necessarily.
oh,
It was
okay, yeah.
more like Deadpool and Wolverine buddy movie, and their dynamic is great. Um, but it didn't succeed for me as a fan of wanting them to integrate this in the MCU in the way that I was hoping. So
How
bit of
would
a
you do that then?
letdown on some levels.
How
So
do you integrate that? Like, what? How do you make that happen? Like, if
yeah,
you
that
do that, do you mean like so we get another film with Deadpool and like several of the other MCU superheroes?
Yeah, that was my thought. At least at the end, they would go, "Oh, now he's got a scene with Thor, or now he's got a scene with,
Oh,
Nick Fury comes in and says, 'Hey, we want you to be in the Avengers,' or something like that, just to at least set up that, oh, he's now in
yeah.
this universe, in this timeline, and he's going to be a major force going forward, or any of the X-Men, really.
Okay. Yeah.
And they don't fully capitalize on that. Again,
Ah.
they're going for the comedy, they're going for the jokes, they're making fun of Fox and all the old Fox movies and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and that's its primary focus. So if you're in it for
Okay.
that, you're going to get a lot out of it. That's not
Yeah.
necessarily why I was there, so
Yeah.
it didn't really fully work for me. But Anthony, give us your thoughts on spoiler-free Deadpool and
yes,
Wolverine.
yes. Lots of humor that I liked. All the action, the cameos. Obviously, there are cameos. It just worked for me.
Okay.
As a fan of Deadpool and just a fan of Marvel in general, it worked for me.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think
And
so.
you said you did like and you liked where it all ended up too at the end too.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Great. It
Yeah.
sounds like I might like it.
Sounds like you might.
You probably will.
I think if you like those first two, you're probably going to get a lot out of this. So
Yes.
so definitely check it out and let me know what you think.
Will do.
But now it's time to rank every X-Men movie that we've discussed thus far. So Anthony and I are going to go first because we'll both have Deadpool and Wolverine on our lists, and then we'll let you go, Bert. So let's start at the bottom. Anthony, number 14. I have at the very bottom X-Men: The Last Stand. Because again, I feel like those first two movies set up such greatness, especially the end of X2 when you see the Phoenix in the water, and I'm like, oh, the Phoenix saga. Like, I'm a huge fan of that storyline. I've got all those comic books. I've read them all multiple times. And to me, it just epically failed. It really did for me.
Wow.
And again, I think the new team behind the scenes, I don't really even feel like they really cared about the characters. Again, I feel like the death scenes just kind of fall flat for me. They've tried to do too much. It just didn't work. So 1 star on X-Men: The Last Stand. That's my
One
least
star?
favorite. 1 star. Yeah, that's all I can give it. All I can give it. Because some of the
Whoa.
performances are good. Of course, you've got Hugh Jackman and great actors in there doing great work, but that's really all that I get out of it. Even the action scenes, I feel like they're kind of weightless. They don't have the impact that they had in the first two
Oh,
movies.
okay.
So, Anthony, give us your bottom pick. What's your least
My
favorite?
least favorite is the New Mutants.
Yeah,
Like I said, it didn't work for me.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was too weird and just I think it got its point across.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of your
Mhm.
fears or overcome your fears. I don't know. It was just weird. I didn't like it.
Yeah, gotcha. All right, Bert, what do you have at the bottom at number 13 for you?
Yeah, I got New Mutants there as well. I'm at
Yeah.
about 1 star. Yeah, it's not completely meritless. I would give it half a star or maybe zero if it was absolutely void of any merit.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't want to watch it again. Don't make me, Cam.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. We'll avoid that one on future podcasts. At number 13, I have Deadpool, the first Deadpool
Oh,
movie. Again, it's just not my sense of humor. It's not something I get a lot out of while I'm watching it. I laugh at a couple jokes. Ryan Reynolds was born to play the role. There's some good action in that first one, but yeah, for me, another one that's just 1 star. I don't really care for it that much. What do you have at 13?
I got Dark Phoenix.
Oh,
I didn't.
okay.
Hmm.
It's like I said, I don't Professor X being the villain. I don't like that. I
Okay,
just don't.
gotcha.
No.
Um, okay, Bert, what do you have at 12?
Okay. And actually, I have Logan at 12. But it's a 3 star film. There's so much about it I enjoy. I just get frustrated with it because I mean, it doesn't go where I want it to go. I'm not the filmmaker, so
Sure.
there we go. It's a little too depressing for me.
Right.
Um, but 3 stars. I mean, I've seen it twice. I look forward to the next time I watch it. All of these ones, like that's why, I mean, I like this series so much because
Yeah.
with one exception of being New Mutants, I mean,
Yeah.
these are all great films.
Great. Excellent. Okay, good stuff. All right. My number 12 is Deadpool and Wolverine, the most recent film in the
Mm,
franchise. For all the reasons I just stated, just not really my thing, not what I was hoping for. Maybe expectations were a little too high for me too. That could play into it. First X-Men movie in the MCU. I was maybe just
yeah.
expecting a little too much from it. But again, it delivers, what you would expect, I guess, from a Deadpool movie. So 1.5 stars on that one because of their dynamic, which is a lot of fun to watch throughout the movie. So that's what I have at 12. Anthony, you're up next. What do you have there?
I got Apocalypse.
Hmm.
It is definitely interesting. Like I said, Apocalypse himself is a good villain.
Yeah.
He does seem like an off-brand Thanos, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. I
So
agree.
yeah.
I agree. All right, Bert, you're up for number 11.
And I've got X-Men 1 at number 11
Hmm.
and really enjoy this movie. I've seen it probably 8 or 9 times,
Okay.
but just there's been so much that came after it that I get so much more enjoyment out of.
Gotcha. Great. All right, moving on to my number 11. You guessed it, Deadpool 2. Yeah, I've got all the Deadpool movies kind of down there because again, it's just not my thing. This movie is easily, I think, the most well-made Deadpool movie. Technically, action, spectacular. Uh, Josh Brolin, as you mentioned, Bert as Cable is kind of like the reason to watch, I feel like. And he's great. I kind of wish the movie was from his perspective. I would probably have it a lot
Yeah,
higher
yeah,
if the whole movie was Cable and then just Deadpool kind of comes in every once in a while. That I would probably
yeah.
enjoy more. But yeah, that's where I ended up putting Deadpool 2 stars on that one.
Okay.
All right, Anthony, you're up next with your number 11.
I got X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Oh, yeah.
It is definitely good. I
Mhm.
feel like it's a good origin for Wolverine.
Okay.
Definitely enjoyed it.
Okay.
But the only bad thing about it is Deadpool, obviously.
Right. Right.
The only bad thing about it. And the CGI.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Gotcha.
it's still a good movie though.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Bert, what do you have at is it number 10?
10.
Yep.
And that's where I put the Wolverine.
Oh, okay.
And the stuff with Japan didn't really impress me, I think, as
Mm.
much as it did maybe for you guys. But
Mhm.
a 3.5 star film. I mean, I get a lot of
Okay.
enjoyment out of it. So.
Okay. Great. Excellent. Good stuff. All right. At number 10, I'm pretty much right there with Anthony. X-Men Origins Wolverine. Yeah, just don't get a lot out of this. Outside of the opening, great opening. And then it just kind of falls apart for me. Becomes a big mess. 2 stars for that one. And the 2 stars are for Hugh Jackman and Liev Schreiber because they're both so good in it. I wish the movie
Yeah.
was better because they're excellent. But yeah, that's where I have it number 10. All right, Anthony, we're moving on to your number 9.
I got First Class.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is definitely interesting. Like I said with X-Men Origins Wolverine,
Mhm.
um, it's a cool origin story for the X-Men kind of,
I agree.
definitely not some good it has some good parts in it.
Yeah, for sure. Some memorable moments,
Yes.
for sure. Great. Bert, what do you have at number 9?
Apocalypse.
Me too.
Okay.
That's where I have
Oh yeah.
Apocalypse as well. Yeah, it's just barely, honestly, barely edges out Wolverine or X-Men Origins Wolverine for me. Like I said, just another one that feels all over the place. Very questionable
Yeah.
decisions being made in that film. Man, Apocalypse had so much potential. Again, if you know the comics or if you've seen the animated series, even he's great in that. He also is much larger in the comics. He's like Thanos size. He's like a big
Oh,
guy.
gotcha. Yeah.
Um, and one of his abilities is actually to grow, kind of like Ant-Man. He can become like a giant
They
creature.
kind of did show that
They do
in
that in the
the
mind
yeah,
battle with
yeah.
he has with Professor X, but they didn't do it in reality. So yeah, definitely a disappointing film on many levels there. All right, Anthony, what do you have at 9?
I have um X-Men, the original
Okay,
X-Men.
okay,
Yeah. Definitely a good movie.
yeah,
Enjoyed it a lot.
yeah, it's a good one. All right, Bert, what do you have at 8?
Yeah, this next one rounds out my 3.5 star range, and that is Dark Phoenix.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, yeah, yeah, gotcha. All right, well, I'll move on to my 8 then, which is the New Mutants. I like it quite a bit better than you guys. I think again, it's kind of one where one performance stands out. Anya Taylor-Joy, I just really think is compelling in that movie. Her character is really interesting. And what they do with her is great. I like a couple of the other characters. Some of the stuff I don't care for, but um, I was entertained by it. I enjoyed watching it. It wasn't one that I was hating watching. Why are they messing up my favorite characters and storylines? It wasn't one of those. So I gave it a little bit higher marks than you guys did. 3 stars for that one for me.
Okay.
All right, moving on to yours. What do you have there, Anthony?
I got X2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely better than the first.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Bert, what do you have there at 7?
I've got First Class, four
Mm.
stars for this one.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, at my number 7, I have Dark Phoenix.
Okay.
Big fan of Dark
Okay.
Phoenix, actually. I really liked the adaptation of that storyline in that movie. And I think the performances are really good. So that's where I put that one. What do you got next, Anthony?
I got The Last Stand. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I definitely enjoyed more than you do.
Definitely.
Right.
Yes. All right, Bert, what do you have at 6?
And that's where I've got The Last Stand.
Okay.
And
Okay.
yeah, I think it's a great culmination of the trilogy. So it definitely gets me pretty good.
Great. Great. All right, well, for my 6, that's where I ended up putting X-Men Days of Future Past.
Okay.
I like this movie. I do have some issues with it, as I mentioned. The road cut I have less issues with. But I think it's a well-made movie. I just think it gets a few things wrong, a few things that I would kind of tweak to make it better. It is very different from the comics, and I don't mind that. In the comics, it's Kitty Pryde who goes back in time, not Wolverine. But here it made a lot of sense for it to be him, obviously. So a lot I like about that movie. Lot I just find to be kind of very memorable in that movie too. just a couple things take me out of it. The casting of Richard Nixon I always found kind of off-putting. Just
Yeah,
the actor,
that's
the
Is this
makeup they put
supposed to
him
be
in, and
him though?
it
yeah.
is. I mean, they say it's Nixon. I mean, they say it
Oh, they
several
do.
times.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, if they had just made it fake president like they do in all the other X-Men movies, I think it would have worked a lot better.
But that's why I thought it wasn't
But
him
Yeah,
because I thought it was just a fake
yeah,
president.
no,
Yeah.
they do say it's him.
yeah.
So, um, but let's move on to your number 6.
I got the Wolverine in
Oh,
Japan.
there we go.
Yeah, the Wolverine in Japan.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
the comics are called some people call it the Japan Saga, or some people call it the Samurai Saga. Great comic book storyline.
yeah, yeah.
Um, good stuff. All right, let's
Mhm.
move on to Bert's number 5.
Okay, top 5 here. So
Yeah.
I've got X2, which kind of rounds out my 4-star films.
Okay,
This
okay.
is neck and neck
X2.
with
Yeah,
X3. I mean, they're both so
sure.
good. I could have probably flipped them.
Okay. I
Yeah.
think you made the right choice. At my number at my number 5, I put X-Men, the original. Again, huge fan of this movie. Grew up watching it. I've watched this one probably more than any of the other ones. 4.5 stars. I really like this movie a lot. I think it's very well made. And again, thinking about its place in the comic book genre, it's so important. This movie just revolutionized it in many ways. So that's where I put the original X-Men, X1. What do you have there?
I got Logan.
Do you?
Yes,
Okay. Top
definitely.
5.
Top 5. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, great. Bert, we're jumping to you now, and you're number 4.
The first Deadpool.
Okay.
And I like it so much. It's a 4.5-star film. Just
Wow.
solid, complete, thorough entertainment, start to finish, basically.
Excellent. Excellent. Great stuff. All right. My number 4 is The Wolverine. Another one I
Okay.
give 4.5 stars. I just, again,
Mm.
every time I watch it, I like it more
Okay.
because of the themes they're dealing with, the performances. I think it looks great. I think it has some of the best action. I like how, it zeroes in on Logan and his character. And it's adapting, again, as I just mentioned, one of my favorite storylines from the comics. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that one's way up there. What do you have it for?
Same as Bert, Deadpool.
Oh, all right. All right. Excellent. Bert, now we're moving on to your number 3.
Unpopular pick, but that's where I've got Origins Wolverine.
Oh, really?
It's yeah. I every time I watch it, it's great. 4.5 stars. I don't know why. I mean, I heard your case, but I don't know. For me, it just really works well. There's a lot of things that are weird and that I
Sure.
don't like too, but it's just
Right.
really entertaining to me. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm glad, like we say on the podcast a lot, everyone's got a movie that they like that no one else likes, So that's why
Yeah.
we've done that defending bad movies podcast in the
Yeah.
past, a couple times, because that's always fun to discuss and to break down. So excellent. All right. Well, my number 3 is X2, X-Men
Mm.
United. This one I vividly remember seeing in the theater. This is the first X-Men film I saw in the theater. I was like, I don't know, 12 or 13 when it came out. And I just remember, again, the anticipation after seeing that first one. Me and my friends at school talking about, did you see the new trailer for that new X-Men? And we were just very excited about this movie. And it delivered on every level. And again, watching it today, it holds up. It holds up really well, not only with the visuals and the effects, but the story is just excellent. It's so well done. So that ended up at number 3. What do you have at number 3?
I got Deadpool 2.
Deadpool 2. Deadpool 2, the sequel to Deadpool. I always thought they should have called it like Deadpool, yeah, we made another one, or like it had a funny title like that, or something like
The
that.
description for Deadpool 2 on Disney Plus is the sequel to the first one.
Right. That should have been
That's
the
it.
title.
Yeah, yeah.
That's great. Now we are on to Bert's number 2. What do you have there?
Days of Future Past.
Great pick. Great
Yeah.
pick. Great
It's
movie.
4.5. I not quite 5 stars.
Okay.
You got to accept that premise that they can even go back in time.
Right.
But yeah, this is some of the best stuff. I mean, this is my favorite non-Deadpool entry in the series.
Yeah, it's great too. I like the whole idea of sending his consciousness back in time. I thought that worked well. I thought that was a
And
cool
putting
way
it
to
in the
do it.
body. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Because you
Exactly.
wonder how's that going to work. But yeah, he goes into the Wolverine that was alive at that time,
Yes,
and then
exactly.
yeah, can't
All
overthink
right.
it too much.
Right, right. Well, at my number two, another 5 star. X2, by the way, is 5 stars for me. A perfect
Oh,
movie.
okay.
One of my favorites of all time. This is also a 5 star film. It's X-Men First Class. I think doing a prequel is always challenging because you're gonna have people scrutinizing it more, especially when you're recasting iconic characters. But they just nailed it all across the board. It was just so well done. The screenplay is great. The action, I think, is spectacular, especially the ending on the beach. I mean, it's just such memorable moments there with all those characters together.
Yeah.
And again, the way they build the relationships and the character dynamics, it's all so, so well done.
Mhm.
So yeah, that ended up at number 2 for me. What do you have there?
Got Days of Future Past.
Okay,
Really good.
nice. You
Yeah.
and Bert are seeing eye to eye on a lot of these.
Yes.
This is cool.
Yeah.
All right, Bert, this is it. Your number one. What's your number one X-Men movie?
The only 5 star film here, Deadpool 2.
All right. All right.
And not because it's perfect.
Yeah,
5 star
sure.
film doesn't have to be perfect. I
Yes.
used to go by that, by the way. I used to
Yeah.
uh, I used to not give any films 5 stars because I thought, well, no film is perfect. But
Right.
if you couldn't be any more entertained than the film you're watching,
Yeah.
so
If it's perfect to
change.
you, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. How much enjoyment do you get out of it? Do you get five
Right.
stars of it worth of enjoyment out of it or not? So excellent. Great, great pick. I am moving on to my number one pick, which is Logan. Uh,
Mm,
to me, Logan, it's on another level. It's almost I almost like don't want to include it in this list because it's just so different. It is so
yeah,
its
yeah,
own thing. But it does build on the past. I mean, it mentions Liberty Island from X1. It has several references that tie it in very strongly to the series. So it's definitely, worth including. But a lot like I look at it a lot like Deadpool. Deadpool was this weird R-rated comedy thing they tried, and Logan's kind of the opposite direction, from a comedy.
yes,
So,
yeah,
I like that again, the series has such variety in it, that there's kind of
true,
something for everybody. And
yeah,
this is right up my alley. This is the kind of cinematic storytelling that I respond to and that I seek out. So, that ended up number one for me. Anthony, you got the last one. What do you have?
I
Number
got
one,
Deadpool and Wolverine.
the latest film in the franchise,
man.
Deadpool in the MCU, finally.
Yes.
And it's your number one pick. I can't fault you for
What
it. You're
was
a big Deadpool fan, so
Cam? What was your star rating on that one?
1.5 for Deadpool and Wolverine.
Okay,
Five
well,
Yeah,
that's a
stars
great
for me.
range.
Five
Man,
stars.
yeah, he's got
five
he's got it
stars.
at 5. He's got it at 5.
Yes.
Carson has it at half a star, I think. So I'm higher than Carson on it at least, but
Half a
yeah.
star. That's like they
You
didn't
guys,
make any kind of art at all.
We'll be talking about it, I'm sure, a lot more in the future.
Yeah,
Our thoughts on that film. Like I said, Anthony and I just did a spoiler review, so that'll be on the channel soon. But thanks, guys, for joining me. This was a ton of fun.
yeah,
This is a long time coming because, Bert, you and I have been talking about X-Men, doing an X-Men podcast for a long time. We're both big fans, obviously, and I'm glad we finally got an X-Men
yeah,
movie in theaters so we could talk about all these. So thanks for joining me.
yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Anthony, thank you for being here.
you're welcome.
This was fun. I'm really glad you got to come on
Mhm.
and talk about this. I'm glad we had to balance it out with some Deadpool fans,
Yes.
give Deadpool some love. But yeah, check out these movies. If you guys haven't, I think they're all on Disney Plus now. I know that's how I watch the Deadpool movies because I don't have them on Blu-ray. So
Yep.
I think they're all on there. That's how I watch New Mutants as well. So you can check out all these movies, except for, of course, Deadpool and Wolverine, which is now in theaters, in case you've been living under a rock and weren't aware of that. So check it out in theaters. Let me know what you guys think. We want to have a conversation about all these movies. Give us your ranking in the comments below. We want to know what your favorite X-Men movies are. Next week, join us for the next podcast. It's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you follow us all on Letterboxd. Those links are all in the description. Anthony's got his own channel you can go and subscribe to as well. I'll link that below. Again, thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it. Make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos, and we'll see you next time right here on The Real World.